we were, what have we been talking about?
Talking about the pastoral epistles.
Okay.
Paul wrote as I called him a pastor.
Okay.
Patrick didn't agree with that. He was an official pastor. But he was a pastoral type person, you know.
Okay.
Pastoring the churches. And so we're studying that first letter that he wrote to the churches, and we can learn a lot from it, you know.
Yeah. So
we were specifically talking about what he taught about how women should be in the church.
okay. Yeah, what should
chapter 2.
What should the church look like? What he's writing to this young man, Timothy, and trying to tell him give him some advice as to what a congregation of the Lord's church should look like. And that's what we try to understand, even though we are 2,000 or more years removed from that. God doesn't change. And so we seek to learn some things about the church. Sometimes we get in the details, we get caught up in the details, but the overriding thought is, what should the church be like? We were looking, like you say, last time, specifically at some thoughts about women, but also some thoughts about men, lifting up holy hands and praying, and then women. And we got down to the end of chapter 2 is where we are. So 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 14 and 15. Adam was not the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. But women will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with propriety. And we were starting to just think about what that might mean, being saved through childbearing. Other translations say preserved. Or restored, one translation says, restored through childbirth. Any idea what that's trying to say? There have been a whole host of potential explanations about it. Childbirth is a difficult time. Why is that?
Because of sin.
Okay, yeah, if you do.
Why is it difficult? Why do you perceive it as being difficult and not being as
I haven't gone through it. Anybody who has gone through it want to say more?
Well, yeah, but it's the way we know we're created. We're creating life just like God in His image, and it's a beautiful thing. I'm sure it's hard.
It goes back to the Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
It's because they sinned. It's one of their punishments.
Yeah. But here we're hearing that women should.
No, but see, we're going to read that verse.
Yeah, if you look at the very first book in the Bible, Genesis chapter 3, verses 15, verse 16. Well, 15 and 16. When Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden, there were some consequences of the sin that applied to Adam and Eve, but also the consequences of that sin have been passed down since the time of that.
But I think it was an opportunity for redemption, not really. You're seeing it maybe the cup half full, assessing half empty, assessing half full, because they're redeemed by that.
Okay,
right? Am I wrong?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about. Let's look at this. To the man, he said, "Cursed are you above all the livestock and all the wild animals. You will," oh, that's the serpent, sorry. "You will crawl on your belly, and son, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." To the woman, he said, I will greatly increase your pains in childbearing. With pain, you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And then to Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat of it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field by the sweat of your brow, and will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return.
Stardust.
So those are curses. And to the woman, he said, I'll greatly increase your pains in childbearing. And I think that's what he's getting at back over in 1 Timothy, because he says women will be saved through childbearing. Kind of an odd way of putting it. It doesn't mean that you'll be saved only if you bear children. That's been shown throughout the scriptures. What else doesn't it mean?
He said, bear children and follow.
So you, before that, Eve had not yet had any children before they were
Yeah, there was an increase.
Right.
sent out of the
Right.
garden. So I wonder, I mean, she wouldn't even know what he was talking about.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering the same thing. I was like, he said there was the word increase, like prior to that, there was no change.
Do we know that for sure?
Why did he say that?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
In that chapter 4 that Cain and Abel are.
But is it always chronological? You know, sometimes the Bible
Well,
will go
that's
back
true.
and
That's true.
recap something.
From what we understand. So it means something else. Doesn't mean you're saved when you have a child, because there's still pain in childbirth today. But some people say, well, it's just saying that death is not going to happen. But there's still a lot of people, quite a number, even in our time, who die in childbirth. So saved through childbirth. I think you were getting at it when you said the redemption that comes through Jesus is a response to the curse. And so, in a sense, through the birth of Jesus, the curse is taken away. The curse on Adam, curse on men, don't have to work so hard. The curse on women. That sounds pretty logical.
But
That
there's
it's
still
through the childbirth, not of everyone, but the childbirth of Jesus. What do you think? That's
But
what
you know what? I was
Wait,
That's not very
Mm.
Sounds good to me.
So,
I was
Well,
just,
another way, when I was looking at this, and it's talked in my footnotes, it talks about women will be restored
okay,
in childbirth. And that makes me think about if there's a curse on us, right? Because of this sin, which I
Yeah.
agree with, then I'm not going to let that sin take you out. You will be restored in a right relationship with God, that ability to have it. Kind of like the curse will be moved. Now that talks to, I guess, a question mark would be, what about women who are not in childbirth? But still, there's a restoration. There's a returning back to God, that he's not
Right.
holding this curse on us indefinitely where we can't have a right relationship with him. So it's kind of I think a catch-all phrase that, okay, men and everybody else, women are not eternally cursed and removed from me, that we are
Yeah.
restored and we can have a right relationship with God as well.
right, I agree. The ultimate curse is what? Death.
Right.
Separation from God.
From God.
Because of sin. And again, through Christ, that curse is taken away if we follow Jesus.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think Paul is just using an argument. If we go back to verse 8, again, Paul is addressing Timothy to a church.
Okay,
And in verse 8, I think he's addressing the anger and controversy. And he's telling the men to pray with holy hands, free of anger and controversy. So in verses 9 through 10, he's addressing the women because they are acting inappropriately by drawing attention to themselves with their jewelry and their hair. And they should be devoting to God and being attracted by what they do. So I think similarly, in verses 11 through 15, he's addressing women. Women should be learning. And the way that they are behaving in this instance, they are not learning quietly and submissively. And I think that Paul uses the example of Eve. Eve was able to be redeemed in the Old Testament because of childbearing. But I think he was giving, like, you know, it's okay, women, that you've been behaving inappropriately because you can also be redeemed in Christ, not necessarily
Yeah.
as a child.
yeah,
This is talking to those women who were there.
Right, yeah.
Who were hard.
Right, yeah, he's like, he didn't want to be too hard on them, you know, like,
right,
here's the bad stuff,
Right,
but, you know,
right.
remember Eve, you know.
yeah, yeah. But the Christ is the one that overcomes the curse. Forgiveness. Anyway, we'll go on. Having dealt,
Christ's childbirth, go back to the Christmas story,
okay.
put it in there.
The next chapter in our versions is, here is a trustworthy saying, if anyone sets his heart on,
What chapter are we?
I mean, we're now in chapter 3, 1 Timothy chapter 3. This is a trustworthy saying. If anyone sets his heart on being an overseer, he desires a noble task. What's an overseer?
You and me.
Well,
Oh, overseer.
those who oversee the church, called elders, called pastors, just another word for shepherd,
Ancianos.
called bishop, the same
Same
meaning.
word in Greek, I guess.
Yes, it's those who
Transliterated different.
oversee the church. Now, he says, if anyone sets his heart on being an overseer, does anybody ever do that? I just thought I'd raise the question. Does anybody ever?
I think some men have,
Yeah.
but I think most people accept the job kind of reluctantly. It's heavy responsibility,
Yes,
and it requires
Yes.
a commitment usually for many years, maybe until you die or something. And we've had many men in our church that became elders, and they died in the office,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Pierre Gary and Daryl and many of them. So it's not
Well-
officially a lifelong appointment, but many men just see it until they're
Like,
die.
following Christ.
That may be my case, it may be Alan's case, who knows?
if you go around and you talk to some of the young
Place.
men in the church and say, are you working to be an overseer? I think most of them would say, no, not me. On the other hand, in a sense, if we want to stay faithful to Jesus as young people, teenagers, younger men, and if you want to stay faithful to Christ, in a sense, that's saying, yes, I'm have that in mind. In other words, I'm preparing myself. You may not have it explicitly in your mind, but
It's like a person who decides, I think I remember reading something about Bill Clinton. from when he was, a young man, he decided that he wanted to be president someday, and maybe other people. And so that's, although I don't think he quite lived up to what I'm about to say,
Yeah.
but I think someone who thinks that way, of that you want to attain to some sort of high position, you have to live your life in a way that you're gonna be able
Yeah.
to, because well, again, our current president gives the lie to that you should live your life in a way that you're going to be able to achieve that. Because I mean, before Ronald Reagan, if a man was divorced, it was like, oh well, he'll never be president. But of course, things obviously have changed. But most people, you want to try to live your life in a way that when you're running for president, people aren't going to be digging up all sorts of scandals from your past. But again, like I say, our current president doesn't seem to be affected by that. And so with an elder, again, you want to be living in a way that someone's not going to, you're nominated to be an elder, and then somebody comes and says, well, he did this or this in the past, and I mean, I don't know that it would disqualify someone, but so maybe you should, if you think maybe that's something that I could be someday, I need to live my life in such a way that nobody's going to be able to reproach me with anything.
Those qualities that we read, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The guy or the lady who wants to be president, so often that's because they want to be the boss. They want to be able to say, you do this, you do that, and have all
famous.
What's that?
You want to be famous too.
Oh, famous.
And
Just
then-
say more than all.
But to be an elder, to be an overseer in the church is just the opposite. Because if you have it in your heart to be an overseer, that means you want to be a servant. Because Jesus taught that that's the ultimate leadership in his kingdom, is to be a servant. And he set the example of washing the disciples' feet. So if you have a desire to be an overseer in the church, you want to be a servant. Anyway,
The president's supposed to be like that.
Now, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of but one wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him with proper respect. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may become conceited and fall under the same judgment as the devil. He must also have a good reputation with outsiders, so that he will not fall into disgrace and into the devil's trap. So what do you think of those qualifications?
I say narcissists are in trouble.
The what?
Narcissists are in trouble.
Not getting into trouble is right. So, it's just being a good Christian. Those are attributes really that everyone should aspire to. But sometimes we fail. The teaching, able to teach. The original King James Version said apt to teach. And I heard some guys find it very difficult to teach in a class situation. But I heard one time it was said, oh, so-and-so he's, doesn't teach now, but he's apt to one of these days. But sometimes teaching takes place on a one-on-one basis rather than somebody who stands up in front of a class every week. Yes, sir.
When I first came here, I was doing a Bible study with Greg. One-on-one with Greg.
Greg Watson, yeah.
What's that?
Greg Watson.
When I
Yeah.
first came to
Yeah.
church, he was.
Greg
Very good.
Watson.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
We do Bible study.
And now he's in charge of missions in Europe. Did you know that?
Whoa, no.
He went
Yeah,
to
promotion.
a training school in Texas because he was a corporate executive,
He was. See,
but he decided he wanted to work for Jesus. So he went to a training school in Texas, Sunset School of Preaching. And as a result of his work there, he's been placed in charge of mission work in Europe.
really? Wait, he doesn't work for McDonald's anymore?
No, he doesn't work for McDonald's anymore. He left that job. He was a vice president.
Now, he's,
Now he's,
yeah, he was vice president of McDonald's. I remember.
yeah,
He
Yeah.
works for
One of the
Sunset, I
brands.
guess, huh? Works for Sunset?
yes,
Wow.
and
That's
works with
awesome.
missionaries in Europe. We just had a picture, one of our missionaries,
Also,
Elsa Springer, met him over in Germany. We should have,
Wow.
No,
Oh, in
wait, no,
Germany,
she
you
went to
mentioned
Poland.
she went to Poland.
The
and he
meeting was
was there.
Poland, yeah.
Anyway,
I would definitely say he became a person that was apt to teach.
yes,
He didn't start out that way,
But
but he has taught classes here when he was here.
oh, yeah,
As a fill-in.
and preaches when he's.
One-on-one, he just had a lady baptized here a few weeks ago. I think he was probably studying with her, one-on-one.
Yeah.
So he has become like a missionary person.
Right.
That's
So
amazing.
he developed that way, but he didn't start out that way, I would say, when he first came here. I don't
That's
think I
right.
ever taught.
That's right. So he kind of switched careers.
That's
He's
awesome.
he's a great example.
he was in the military, and I think he got some leadership, good leadership skills
Okay,
there.
yeah,
You know,
Oh, he was in another, sir.
but you know, he had business experience, it all can contribute to
and
whatever.
he went to Lane Tech High School.
You did too.
I just happened to. Anyway, but there is a man, I would say, who had his heart and mind on being a servant leader in the church. And he was served as an elder while he was here, in addition to being a teacher. And now he's kind of branching out. So,
Now we consider him an elder at large. He's out there, out in the field,
Yeah.
And we consider him a member of our church still. He's still out there, he does come to visit several times a year.
I've seen him.
But we kind of, at least kind of kid him about that, but we consider him a member here still. Even though he's out there in the field.
anyway, go ahead.
Say a lot of these qualities show maturity, you can't be 10
Yes.
years old and do this.
Yes, it's not a new convert who becomes an elder.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, what is the concept?
The new convert.
Oh, that's someone who has just come to Jesus, maybe just learned about Jesus and then very soon. It takes a little while to develop the qualities you need to be an elder in the church. That's kind of why it's called elder. It's an older, now that there's an age requirement. Some people are made elders.
Oh, so that the party must not be a recent convert. That makes sense.
Yeah, so, you're not baptized one week and next week you're an elder.
No,
You're given a chance to learn
still went behind
and
the ears.
develop. Yeah,
We want somebody like that as an elder.
Yeah.
Their pattern
Or
and
a deacon.
tradition of the elders sat at the gate, they were the mature men,
yes.
I mean,
I think
You
it's,
know what? I have
Okay.
a comment with verse 4. It used to
Okay.
be years ago that your children must be believers. And now it seems that, at least in my version here, it says they must manage his own family well and see that children obey him with proper respect. But I remember years ago being taught this passage saying that the overseer, the elder, their children must be believers. And so, because
yes,
that shows
what you-
again
what
that
you're speaking of.
maturity and that wisdom in raising your families
Yeah, that's what I was,
Yeah, Titus 1:6.
you have that, okay.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
Titus.
and was faithful to his wife and whose children believe.
Yeah, the similar qualifications are given in Paul's letter to Titus, and that's where that specific language is.
Okay.
Believing children. Sometimes, though, a child is raised in the church, as we say, but then when they get to an age where they make their own decisions, they kind of make their own decision and don't stay with it. But, you know, you can't force a child. You can raise them as best you can in a Christian home, but then ultimately they make their own decisions.
I went to church for my honor first time. I was baptized with them. There used to be something called Indiana Church in Chicago. They would come and like pick you up, pick up all the kids, and the moms would pick up because they wanted like to move a long time ago.
So how do elders get chosen?
That's where you are.
Yeah.
That's where you are.
There's different methods that are used. The tradition here is that if it looks like a man is qualified, usually the existing elders will approach him and say, would you like to serve as an elder? And then his name is put before the congregation. And if anyone knows of something as to a reason why he might not be qualified, you're given a period of time to make that known. And if there are none, which is usually the case, then an individual is installed as an elder. So it's kind of by acclamation. We have had names put before the congregation that were subsequently withdrawn. So anyway, but in other places, it's a little different. I visited a church recently, visited many times. It's got 1,000 members, back actually more than that. And I was talking with one of the elders, and he said, we consider that we've got about 50 men here that are qualified to be elders, but we hold it to 15. They've got a formal process where they have 15 elders at any one time. And the elders serve for a period of 3 years, and then they put in new elders so that all of the men get an opportunity, but they're not all serving at the same time. They find that as a little bit more efficient. Anyway, some places hold elections. Some churches hold secret ballot elections. So-and-so we put forward as an elder, and they give them a ballot and they fill it out. So the Bible doesn't tell us exactly how elders are to be chosen. The letter is to Timothy, or specifically to Titus, to ordain elders in every city. And those were evangelists who went around, and they had the responsibility to look out from among the members and appoint men who met these requirements. So anyway.
So what about the tiny churches that have like 5 women?
The what now?
The churches that have 5 women and like 1 man.
Well,
Not every church has.
it's from what we understand, churches had elders, not an elder.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to
So
have,
you need to create the church, but having all these positions not church.
Oh, no.
you need to have
Like
more than
small
one
or-
to have an eldership. And we had that one, we had 2 elders at one point, one of them died. And so we didn't have an eldership for a
Still
brief
true.
period of time.
I would say.
Well, here's a question I have,
Gather.
based on what you've said about how we choose
Oh,
elders.
it's church.
No, what she said, because my mom's mentioned that a lot, where she's gone to a congregation, where my mom's gone to a congregation, there's only like 1 man.
Yeah, so you could just.
Yeah, she's experienced that a lot. But it's been a good experience and stuff.
I don't know. I would suspect that there's a very high percentage of churches that don't have elders because either the men are too young or they don't feel qualified to serve, but there are quite a number of churches that don't have elders. Probably some of those should, but it's not up to me to judge.
I think so.
Sometimes a minister can wanna dominate,
Yeah, I think that's what my mom
and
said.
they don't want elders telling them what to do.
Yeah,
So I think I've seen a case where a dominant minister makes sure that no elders are appointed, put it that way.
Yeah.
He works for the deacons and he basically controls the church.
Yeah.
And that's not what the Bible tells him to do it,
yeah.
but that has happened and still goes on, I think.
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up later after we talked briefly about deacons. But, you know, it talks about elders, overseers. Deacons are certainly servants of the church with many of the same qualifications as an elder.
You said evangelists go out to pick.
That's what the New Testament,
Evangelists are people that.
Paul writes to Titus specifically in that. I think that's one of the first sentences of the book there. Maybe, yeah. What is it? Yeah.
Titus 1:5.
Titus 1:5.
I left you on the island of Crete so that you could complete our work here and there and appoint elders in each town as I instructed you.
Yeah, yeah. That's written to Titus, another young evangelist. That's what I was going to raise. We've got overseers and servants who are deacons, but what about ministers? Well, an evangelist, evangelism is a fancy word for converting people. You can evangelize people to various things. These are people who are specifically working to make Christians, to change people into Christians. But you can be an evangelist to change, you know, to get somebody to eat potato chips or anything. It's
Or
just a
like
general word. But
Platoism or
yeah,
Stoicism. Or
right. But in the context of the scriptures, it's somebody interested in converting people to Jesus. Where does the minister fit in? All of these into this structure. Is that something, is it a good or a bad thing?
He's hired by the elders, right?
Yes, the minister is an employee of the church.
I don't know, sometimes a volunteer, aren't they? They don't always get money.
Sometimes they're paid. Many times the preacher, if a church doesn't have enough to pay him, he works another job and preaches too. It's called a minister, though, so often, as Dan said, exercises leadership, but the word means servant. A minister is nothing but a servant. The minister.
It's very similar to the word deacon.
Okay,
I
yeah,
understand it. Look at it in the Greek,
yeah.
and the deacon is a servant.
Or, yeah, a minister can be an elder. Patrick is an elder. Here, Carlos is an elder. So they can serve as in both capacities. Generally, in the Old Testament time, or in the New Testament time, the evangelist is kind of one who travels around. And like Timothy and Titus travel around and minister or preach at different congregations and then move on. They're strengthening the church all over, kind of like
Like
Greg
Greg.
Watson. Yeah,
Yeah,
he goes around.
James.
And it's in our time, we have a located minister who doesn't do that much traveling around, but primarily ministers to one church and serves under the oversight of the elders and does a lot of preaching, teaching in classes and teaching and counseling one-on-one and otherwise. So it's just another person who serves the church.
You hear about ministers being paid at various times, and well, at least some ministers were paid some of the time by some of the churches they ministered to, but the fact that they traveled may have a lot to do with that, and it was a stipend for travel and reimbursement for travel expenses. But it's I imagine a lot of churches would have had elders and deacons preaching, at least when there wasn't a traveling minister.
Now, the concept of the located minister, especially those who stay on and on for a long period of time, is kind of more modern. When my mother was growing up in rural Arkansas, they didn't have preaching every Sunday. They had a preacher who rotated around in Northwest Arkansas, and he might be at your congregation once a month and would be at another congregation or 3 or 4 different congregations once a month.
How many college students
What's that?
start going to the college students?
That's right. A lot of the
After college,
I mean, no, during, while they're learning to be
Yeah.
preachers. We got kids
like
here
that fellow Drew, who was here. He preaches in churches around in Arkansas
Yeah.
as a student.
It's a job.
Yeah.
But they go to school.
Kind of like a circuit lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Like Lincoln, he was a circuit lawyer. He'd go out for 2 or 3 months at a time. I read about this with about 10 lawyers. It's like a posse, and they go from town to town and they settle all the cases in a week and move on to the next town. That's kind of what these preachers are doing. They're going around and ministering to the churches, and it still goes on today in our country, and I've read about it in other countries.
Well, it's more common in other countries now. It's called a word, assizes, but anyway. So, well, let's get deacons in this thing. Back to Timothy. In the same way, deacons likewise are to be men worthy of respect, sincere, not indulging in much wine, and not pursuing dishonest gain. They must keep hold of the deep truths of the faith with a clear conscience. They must first be tested, and then, if there is nothing against them, let them serve as deacons. In the same way, their wives are women worthy of respect, not malicious talkers, but temperate and trustworthy in everything. A deacon must be the husband of but one wife and must manage his children and his household well. Those who have served well gain an excellent standing and great assurance in their faith in Christ Jesus. So that's what that word means, is a servant of the church. Sometimes people think of deacons as kind of, second-class elders, but it's really a completely different function. So often the elders serve as deacons first, but it doesn't have to be the case.
To be fishermen?
What's that?
Isn't that our job to be fishermen?
Our job,
Like everybody.
to be fishermen.
Yes. Again, these are qualifications that every Christian should aspire to. Again, if you can be a servant of the church in many ways without having a formal title of deacon, but to give the title is just kind of a recognition that you meet these qualifications. We as a church try to give specific jobs to the men who are deacons, but sometimes there's a deacon at large. We don't have specific
I think we
jobs.
usually see the job of deacon as a springboard to being an elder.
Yes.
Many of our elders, like you and I, were both deacons for many years before we were tapped to be an elder. And that's gone on and on in this church all the years we've been here. And it goes on in other churches too.
I'll tell you a story. I was just a youngster here, we had an elder that Dan knows by the name of Fred Boyd. And he resigned as an elder because his work transferred him to Michigan for a while. But then he came back to Chicago and he was reappointed as an elder. And I was just a youngster. I said to my parents, doesn't he need to be a deacon first?
Oh.
And they said, no, that's not
That's the thinking.
because all the elders that I knew had been deacons first.
Right.
But that's just,
It is a good place to serve. It's good preparation for it. Because you're usually given some kind of responsibility.
yes,
And that kind of tests your character to see if you're steadfast, you know, if
yes.
you're gonna see that through or you're gonna fall down in the job, you know. Usually, you know, deacons come through and do a good job and then they're moved up.
But if you, I can think of, you could probably think of more, very faithful men, deacons, that just stayed, that they just were faithful and they did their deacon thing and that they really
Yes.
didn't feel comfortable with the
Yes.
other roles or whatever.
Well, I tell you, my father was a deacon here for decades, but he never felt that he wanted to be an elder because he felt that he was not really good at teaching, is the bottom line. He told me that he taught a class at Northwest once in his life,
Really?
and his knees were shaking and he could barely get the words out. But other than that, he was
Terrible.
the finest of the finest and servant of the church in many, many ways. But you're right, some men just feel that they're not called to be an elder. So anyway, those are any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was meeting with Patrick and his group, and we talked about leadership. And we were talking about eldership, pastors, evangelists, etc. And it come up that a lot of people men don't want to be elders or ministers because they don't want to correct. And he talked about some ministers, what they would say is, you know, hands off, let the elders make the correction on the body. I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
We were all talking very candidly about perhaps that lack of leadership that takes on correcting the body,
Okay.
or correcting individuals. As the weakest chain go, that's how the church is. And so it's interesting that we haven't talked about correction being a part of eldership or leadership when it is, when you have members perhaps doing things, saying things, being away. I remember I brought this up when we were all talking that people were smoking outside of the church at Northwest, and I was offended by that. And I thought, wow, you know, offended not so much for me, but for us being on the corner and being in the community and people walking by going, oh, that's the church. And this is how the members look. And I got into I had said something to someone and nothing was done. And then I said something to the people because it was every Sunday morning. I would come up and they were standing outside smoking. And I just thought, this doesn't look good. And I don't care whether they smoke. And personally, I don't think smoking is necessarily a sin. I'm talking about optics. I'm talking about us being like Jesus and what the world looks at and thinks. And so I said something to them. I said, hey, could you guys do that somewhere else? And the member said to me, did you die? Who died and made you Jesus? And I was like, okay. And I just walked away and never said anything again. So that lack of leadership is very important, or leadership is important when correction is a part of it. It can't just be serving. Serving is very important, I think, but also part of that service is to be able to tap someone on the shoulder and say, you know, I want to help you be more like Christ, or however you want to say it. And I think sometimes that's lacking when we talk about eldership or leadership or evangelist. So I just wanted to bring up that my 2 cents about leadership and, you know, just the recent conversation I've had with a few other people about it. But I think that's important. If we're talking about this subject, overseers and deacons are not just leaders and pastors and pastoral, but they're also willing to tap you on the shoulder and pull you aside and say things to the benefit.
That's part of the concept of oversight. And it's one of the most difficult parts for anybody, confrontation. You have to be able to confront people from time to time and say, we think that you need to consider making a change. Or we think maybe you need to put that cigarette out when you're around the church building, or we need you need to consider something in your life. And that's hard. It's hard for parents. It's hard for the people who are bosses in different work situations. But it takes courage and love. If you love your children, you're going to confront them from time to time. Same if you love the brethren and the sisters. You have to do that from time to time.
Isn't that like the church people are smoking? At least they come to church.
Well,
and they're not smoking in church, so I'm not bothering them. And then isn't that a borderline like judging people?
I'll tell you, when I was very young, that was very common.
Yeah, you smoke in the boxing ring.
More people smoke.
In the boxing ring, like gyms.
But now we're beginning to realize, as a society and as a church, that that's not just harming the individual; it can harm other people too.
Absolutely. But she said outside as well.
So,
but
even that, I mean,
it's
not a. You just, consider the example you're setting.
I know there's some members here.
Yeah, I'm sure, but what example are you setting for younger people, for other Christians?
Well, and it's like the scripture says, everything's permissible, but not everything's beneficial, right? And so it's just being wise in when and where and how we conduct ourselves. It's not just smoking. It's in anything. That was just the example that stood out to me, but it's even being around Christians, brothers and sisters who maybe they swear every other word. So what do we do about that? Ignore it? Or do we say, hey, bro, hey, sister, kid, what's going on here? I think that's, it's the spirit of leadership. And as we talked about, we all have a role in being Christians and Christ-like, and we either turn an eye to that, and that says that weakens the whole church. That's my mindset anyway.
Yeah.
That's how I think. If we allow things in our presence to kind of dampen who we are as disciples or as Christians.
Things change. I mean, when 75 years ago, everybody did it and nobody cared. But now we know a little bit more about it, and we need to be more serious about that, and probably some other things too. So anyway, oh boy.
Why do you think they specify for both of these that they have to be married men with children?
Well,
I know it says if you don't know how to manage your family, how are you going to manage the flock? But I mean, I think there are plenty of like business executives who can manage a company very well, and maybe they're not married, or maybe they don't have children.
Or children to make great decisions.
They're looking for maturity and I guess kind of leadership on that more intimate setting of the family. There were not too many big business executives in the first century because there weren't too many big businesses. But yeah,
I think church is a type of family.
That's right.
And so
the family of God.
Things from a regular family, healthy family, to transfer over to a healthy church family. That's the idea.
Can you hear me?
What's that? Yeah, you agree?
I'm talking about what our sister Colette just said. There is certain things you can see around the church sometimes. If you are not bold enough you ignore it, but it's danger the others, for Christianity's sake.
Yeah.
You must be bold enough to, confront somebody who you think that what he or she is doing, it's not transform a character of Christ. You must be bold enough to confront that fellow with love of Christ.
Right.
Because as the Bible itself tells us, whoever claims to be in Christ, that means you have to follow the footsteps of Christ. You need to be transformed. You have been transformed. Once you have transformed and come to Christ, you cannot be 100% a saint, yes, but there is certain things somebody will see. It's better for the fellow to tell you that this is your mistake, for you to correct it.
Yes.
Partly, as we are learning about leadership right now, it's telling us a leader must not be somebody who drinks too much. He said, if he said not drink too much, that means you can drink not too much. Even if you can drink, I will not drink in front of you. I will not drink in front of you for Christ's sake.
Okay.
For Christ's sake.
For Christ's sake.
Yes. If I want to drink that kind of drink, that the wine that he is talking about here, that must not be too much wine. That means you can take the wine, but not too much. Then he gives me the way. That doesn't give me a privilege that if I am in the presence of my brethren Christians, if I start drinking, they will also fall in that. I destroy them. They see my character to follow, and they destroy. You will be at a church auditorium, and you will get out and be smoking outside, and after smoking, and you will come in. No. Even the smoke itself, it is written, is dangerous. If the word himself said that the thing that you are smoking is dangerous, what about coming into Christ?
Yeah.
And you have to do in the presence of, your fellow Christians. It's uncalled for. There is a certain things these days, we normally just ignore it, put our head down and thinking that it's normal. Oh, let's forget about it. It doesn't matter. But those things are destroying, the Christian ability. Truly, a lot. Church of Christ is falling a lot of victims these days, a lot, because the Church of Christ that I know you people begin before up to these days, how you grow in up to this day. If you compare it, you can see that there is a lot of difference and things that is inaugurated, which is not as you want it, but sometimes you just put your eyes down and say that, oh, let it go. But I don't think it's proper. Thank you.
Well, the bottom line is what you said. For the sake of Christ, we do a lot of things. We govern our lives for the sake of our influence for Jesus. And that's what they're looking for elders and deacons. So thank you for all of your thoughts and your wisdom. We learn from one another.
Hi.
Okay, Josh is going to turn this on.